October 25th, 1944, 6:47 a.m., Pacific Ocean off Samar Island. Seaman Daniel Marsh stands on the flight deck of USS St. Lo, his hands gripping a steel railing slick with morning dew. The air is thick and humid, degrees, carrying the salt smell of open water. Below him, the carrier's hull cuts through gentle swells,
We need
leaving
to
a
act
white wake that
decisively.
disappears
Prepare the
into
necessary
pre-dawn
documents
gray.
immediately.
He's 19 years old, an Iowa farm boy who 6 months ago had never seen the ocean. The radar screen flickers in the island superstructure behind him. The radar operator's voice crackles over the ship's intercom, flat and professional, but something underneath makes Marsh's stomach tighten. Surface contacts, bearing 340, range 17 miles. Multiple large returns, closing fast. Marsh looks toward the horizon. Nothing yet, just the endless gray line where sea meets sky. The watch officer leans over the radar repeater, his face bathed in green light. He goes very still. Then he reaches for the ship's telephone, his hand moving with careful deliberation, and Marsh knows something is wrong because officers don't move that carefully unless they're trying not to panic. The captain's voice comes over the 1MC, the ship-wide announcing system. It's calm, almost conversational. That scares Marsh more than shouting would have. All hands battle stations. This is not a drill. We have multiple surface contacts inbound, large contacts. Stand by for identification. Marsh's heart hammers against his ribs. Large contacts. In these waters, that means Japanese warships. But the big Japanese fleet is supposed to be hundreds of miles north being chased by Admiral Halsey's carriers. Everyone said so at breakfast. Everyone was sure. The radar operator's voice again higher now. Sir, I'm reading battleship size returns. 4 capital ships, 6 heavy cruisers, multiple destroyer escorts. Silence on the bridge. Then the captain's voice stripped of its calm. Sound general quarters. All aircraft launch immediately. Whatever ordnance you have, get it in the air now. Marsh runs to his station. Around him, the flight deck erupts into controlled chaos. Plane handlers sprint to aircraft. Pilots stumble from ready rooms still pulling on flight gear. The deck crew hasn't finished arming half the planes. They were supposed to launch routine patrol at 7:30. They have 20 minutes to get airborne, whatever can fly. The sun breaks over the eastern horizon, painting the sea gold. And there, silhouetted against that rising sun, Marsh sees them. Masts. Dozens of them, growing taller as the Japanese fleet closes the distance. His buddy Thomas Keane appears beside him, face pale. Danny, those are battleships. We can't fight battleships. Marsh stares at the approaching fleet. In the growing light, he can make out details now. The distinctive pagoda mast of a Yamato-class battleship, the largest warship ever built, 72,000 tons. 18-inch guns that can throw a shell the weight of a Volkswagen more than 25 miles. USS St. Lo displaces 7,800 tons. Its heaviest weapon is a single 5-inch gun. The air boss's voice screams over the flight deck speakers. Launch, 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 everything with wings, get it off my deck. An F-4F Wildcat roars down the flight deck, catapult shot gone in 3 seconds. Then another. The deck shudders with each launch. Marsh loads a torpedo onto a TBM Avenger, his hands moving on muscle memory, because his brain has gone numb. The torpedo weighs 2,000 pounds. It's designed to sink cargo ships and maybe cruisers. Against a battleship's belt armor, it might as well be a firecracker. The pilot climbs into the cockpit. He's 23, maybe 24. Lieutenant Frederick Burgess from Grand Rapids, Michigan. He looks down at Marsh and Keane. We're supposed to attack battleships with this, Marsh nods. His throat is too tight to speak. Burgess's face hardens. Load it. We'll make it count. The plane taxis forward. Catapult shot. Gone. Now Marsh can hear it. The distant rumble of heavy guns. The sound rolls across the water like thunder, but this thunder doesn't fade. It builds. Shell splashes erupt 2 miles astern. Geysers of white water climbing 200 feet into the air. The Japanese are firing at maximum range 18-inch shells that take 45 seconds to fall from the sky. The captain's voice again. All ships fleet speed. Make smoke. We're running east. Running. 6 escort carriers running from 4 battleships. The mathematics are brutal. St. Lo's maximum speed is 18 knots. The Japanese battleships can make 27. Every hour they close 9 nautical miles. In 90 minutes, they'll be in gun range. In 2 hours, this will be over. Marsh watches another salvo fall closer now, a mile and a half astern. The Japanese are finding their range. Keane grabs his arm. We're in a Woolworth carrier, Danny. Combustible, vulnerable, expendable. That's what they call us. Marsh has heard the jokes. Everyone has. CVE. The official designation is carrier escort, but the sailors say it stands for something else. Combustible, vulnerable, expendable. These carriers were built in 8 days by a man who'd never designed a warship, built in shipyards that assembled them like automobiles, welded instead of riveted, merchant ship hulls with flight decks bolted on top, no armor, minimal armament. The Navy's admirals called them floating death traps, and now 6 of them face the most powerful battleship fleet ever assembled. Marsh looks at the radar screen through the island door. The Japanese contacts are 14 miles away now, closing at 9 knots relative speed. Nobody told the battleships we're expendable, Marsh says. His voice sounds strange in his own ears, steadier than he feels. Keane almost laughs. Almost. Another salvo screams overhead. These shells don't splash in the water. They slam into the sea 800 yards astern, close enough that Marsh feels the concussion through the deck. Close enough to see the white-hot fragments of steel spinning through the spray. The ship heels hard to starboard, turning to unmask her stern, making the Japanese lead the target. The deck tilts at 15 degrees. Marsh grabs a tie-down ring to keep from sliding. And in that moment, as the carrier turns and the morning sun catches the white water of their wake, Marsh understands something that makes his chest tight. This ship wasn't supposed to be here. 16 hours ago, she was 50 miles north, providing air support for Army troops on Leyte. Routine patrol. Safe duty. But overnight, while he slept, Admiral Halsey took his fleet carriers north to chase a Japanese decoy force. And in the pre-dawn dark, the Japanese center force slipped through San Bernardino Strait. The strait Halsey was supposed to be guarding. The escort carriers woke up alone. 6 cheap, slow, poorly armed carriers. And now the entire Japanese battleship fleet is bearing down on them. Nobody planned this. Nobody imagined this. This battle shouldn't exist. But the shells keep falling closer with each salvo, and Daniel Marsh realizes he's about to find out if a ship built in 8 days by welders who'd never seen combat can survive against the pride of the Imperial Japanese Navy. The radar operator's voice. Range 12 miles, bearing steady. They're not turning away, sir. No, they're not turning away. Why would they? 6 escort carriers, 12 knots slower, thin-skinned, each one worth maybe 1/20th what a fleet carrier costs. Expendable. The Japanese have been hunting carriers for 3 years. Now they've found 6 alone undefended running, scared. They're not going to let this opportunity pass. Marsh watches another spread of aircraft launch. FM-2 fighters armed with rockets designed to attack ground targets, useless against battleship armor. But they launch anyway because something is better than nothing, because sitting still means dying, because American sailors don't surrender ships without a fight. Even ships everyone said would never work. Even ships built by a man who never wore a uniform. The shell splashes are 600 yards astern now. Yamato has St. Louis range. The next salvo will hit or miss by luck alone. Marsh looks at Keane. We need to talk about how we got here. Keane stares at him. What? How we ended up on this ship? Why this ship even exists? Because if we're going down, I want to understand it. The story begins 4 years earlier. Not here, not in the Pacific. In a naval shipyard in Philadelphia, where a 61-year-old industrialist with an 8th grade education looks at a half-built aircraft carrier and does mathematics that will change the war. To understand what happens in the next 2 hours, you need to understand that man. You need to understand why the Navy hated him, why they mocked his ships, why they said his carriers would kill more Americans than they'd save. And you need to understand why he built them anyway. The story begins with Walter Kaiser. November 1941. Kaiser stands in the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard watching workers rivet hull plates onto USS Lexington. The carrier is massive, 888 feet long, displacing 36,000 tons. It's beautiful in the way massive machinery can be beautiful, powerful, precise, built to last. The foreman tells Kaiser they laid the keel in April. They estimate completion in May 1943. Maybe June if there are delays. Kaiser does the math in his head. April 1942 to May 1943, 25 months. More than 2 years to build one aircraft carrier. He asked the foreman how many carriers America has in the Pacific. 3, the foreman says. After Pearl Harbor, just 3. Japan has 10. Plus 2 years of combat experience. Plus control of half the Pacific. Kaiser thanks the foreman and walks back to his hotel. That night, he can't sleep. The numbers keep running through his head. 25 months per carrier. America is losing the shipbuilding race before the war even starts. But Walter Kaiser has spent his life looking at impossible timelines and finding ways to make them possible. He's the man who built Hoover Dam in 5 years when engineers said 7 minimum. The man who built the Oakland Bay Bridge 6 months early. The man who looked at every expert opinion that said something couldn't be done and then did it anyway. His philosophy is simple. Find the need. Fill it fast. Don't accept impossible. At 61 years old, Kaiser has never built a ship, but he's built a reputation. Speed, efficiency, results. In early 1941, he read about the British Navy's desperate need for cargo ships. German U-boats were sinking merchant vessels faster than British shipyards could replace them. Kaiser saw opportunity. He built a shipyard in Richmond, California on empty land. Built it in 90 days. Then he told the government he could build cargo ships faster than they were being sunk. The Maritime Commission was skeptical. Kaiser had 0 shipbuilding experience. But they were desperate. They gave him a trial contract, 30 cargo vessels. Kaiser delivered the first ship in 110 days. Industry average was 240 days. He did it through heresy. He welded hulls instead of riveting them. He prefabricated entire sections in inland workshops, then shipped them to the coast by rail and bolted them together like children's building blocks. He hired women and black workers that traditional shipyards refused to train. Navy officers were horrified. These aren't real ships, they said. They're welded tin cans that'll split apart in the first storm. But Kaiser's ships floated. They carried cargo. And when America needed them, they were ready. Now, lying in his hotel room in Philadelphia, Kaiser has an insight. If you can mass-produce cargo ships, why not carriers? Not fleet carriers. Those take too long, cost too much, require too many skilled workers and too much specialized equipment. But what about small carriers? Cheap carriers. Carriers built on merchant ship hulls. Carriers that could provide air cover for convoys and landing forces, while the big fleet carriers hunted Japanese task forces. He calls his chief engineer the next morning. Marcus Bedford, 60 years old. Scottish immigrant. Skeptical by nature and training. Marcus, how fast could we build an aircraft carrier? Bedford's voice comes through the phone line, heavy with doubt. Walt, we build freighters, not warships. That's not what I asked. How fast? Bedford is quiet for a long moment. Kaiser can hear him thinking, running numbers. If you gave me a merchant hull already under construction, stripped it to the frame, added a flight deck, maybe 6 months. What if we built 50? Could we do 1 per week? The silence stretches longer this time. When Bedford speaks again, his voice is careful, like a man talking to someone who might be losing his mind. Walt, that's insane. I didn't ask if it's insane. I asked if it's possible. The Navy would never approve such a thing. Find a way to make it work, Kaiser says. I'll handle the Navy. It's pure Kaiser. See the need, ignore the skeptics, move fast. But handling the Navy will test even his legendary salesmanship. January 12, 1944, Navy Bureau of Ships, Washington, D.C. Kaiser's presentation lasts 12 minutes. He unfolds blueprints across the conference table drawings that aren't even finished dimensions penciled in the margins. His proposal is this. Convert 50 merchant ship hulls into escort carriers. Build them all simultaneously at his Vancouver, Washington shipyard. Deliver 1 carrier per week starting April 1944. The room erupts. Admiral Harold Breslin sits at the head of the table. 58 years old, career Navy. Every year of it shows in his face carved deep by responsibility and loss. He lost his son Edward at Pearl Harbor. Edward was 19 years old, fresh from Annapolis, serving on USS Arizona when the bombs fell. For 3 years, Breslin has carried that loss like a stone in his chest. And now this industrialist, this civilian who never served a day, never commanded a ship, never watched young men die, stands here proposing to build carriers in a week. Breslin's voice is cold. Mr. Kaiser, we took 9 months to convert USS Long Island. You're proposing 50 ships in 50 weeks. That's correct, Admiral. That's impossible. Kaiser doesn't blink. Your shipyards use traditional naval construction. I use industrial mass production. Different methods. Different timeline. Rear Admiral Samuel Robinson leans forward. Mr. Kaiser, have you ever built a warship? No, sir. Have you ever designed a flight deck arresting gear aircraft elevators? No, sir. Then what exactly qualifies you to build 50 aircraft carriers? Kaiser meets his eyes. I deliver what I promise when I promise it. My record speaks for itself. The admirals exchange glances. Several shake their heads. Captain Douglas Mather tries diplomacy. Mr. Kaiser, your enthusiasm is admirable, but carrier construction is enormously complex. Catapult synchronization, aviation fuel storage, ammunition handling, arresting wire tension calculations. These systems require years of engineering experience. Kaiser interrupts. I'll hire naval architects to handle technical specifications. My job is production speed. That is against regulations, Robinson says flatly. Warship construction requires Navy oversight at every stage. Inspections, approvals, modifications. You can't just build them like cargo ships. Why not? The question hangs in the air. Because, Robinson says slowly, that's not how it's done. Kaiser leans back in his chair. Admiral, you're losing ships faster than you're building them. The old way isn't working. I'm offering a new way. A way that violates every standard of naval engineering. Mather shoots back. These vessels would be structurally unsound, tactically vulnerable, strategically worthless. Kaiser points to the blueprints. These carriers will hold 30 aircraft. They'll make 18 knots. They'll provide air cover within 5 miles of any landing beach. That's not worthless. They'll also be unarmored, undergunned, and let's be honest, coffins for their crews. Breslin stands. His voice is quiet, but it cuts through the room like a blade. Mr. Kaiser, my son Edward died on the Arizona. He was 19 years old. He died on a real warship built by real naval architects to real Navy standards. He pauses. The room is absolutely silent. You're proposing to send other men's sons into combat on merchant ships with flight decks tacked on. These vessels will be death traps, and you'll have blood on your hands. Kaiser reaches into his jacket pocket. He pulls out a letter yellowed with age, creased from being folded and unfolded 1,000 times. He reads it aloud. Dear Walt, we're pinned down outside Belleau Wood. Germans have us in a crossfire. We keep calling for artillery support, but they say it's tactically complex, requires proper coordination. Boys are dying while the brass figures out the proper procedure. Tell Mom if I don't make it that I died waiting for help. Your brother Thomas. Kaiser looks up. Thomas wrote that letter June 4th, 1918. He died June 6th. He was 22 years old. He died waiting for support that was too perfect to arrive in time. The room is silent. Kaiser's voice is steady. How many Marines died at Tarawa waiting for air support from carriers that were too valuable to risk close to shore? How many will die next month? Next year? He gathers his blueprints slowly. You can build 12 carriers your way by 1947. I can build 300 my way by 1945. Your choice, gentlemen. He walks to the door, turns back. Every day you delay, more kids die on beaches, waiting for air cover that never comes. My brother died like that. I won't stand by and watch it happen again. The meeting ends. Admiral Robinson's report, stamped confidential and filed the next day, concludes that Kaiser's proposal is tactically unsound and operationally dangerous. He does not recommend proceeding. But one copy of that report reaches a different desk. February 8, 1944. The Oval Office. President Franklin Roosevelt reads Robinson's rejection letter, then sets it aside. His voice is conversational, almost friendly. Harold explained to me why we're saying no to 300 aircraft carriers. Admiral Ernest King shifts in his chair. King is the toughest admiral in the Navy. Hard, demanding, uncompromising. Men fear his temper and respect his judgment in equal measure. Sir, the Bureau of Ships has serious concerns about structural integrity, combat survivability, crew safety. These vessels would be built to merchant standards, not naval standards. Would they float? Yes, but they would be vulnerable to, Roosevelt raises his hand, would they carry aircraft? Yes. Would they provide air cover for convoys and landing forces? King pauses. In theory, yes. Roosevelt picks up 3 casualty reports from his desk. Tarawa, 987 Marines dead. Wake Island, 1,500 captured or executed. Bataan, 10,000 dead in the death march. He looks at King. Harold, I don't need perfect carriers in 1947. I need good enough carriers in 1944. We're losing this war. Japanese carriers just bombed Darwin. Singapore fell. We lost the Philippines. I don't need your bureaus telling me why something can't be done. I need ships in the water saving American lives. He pushes the rejection letter back across the desk. Tell your Bureau of Ships to find a way to say yes. 3 weeks later, Admiral King returns with a compromise. The Navy will approve Kaiser's plan with conditions. Naval architects from Gibbs and Cox will design the ships. Navy inspectors will monitor construction, and the first vessel must pass sea trials before any additional ships are authorized. Kaiser accepts immediately. But before King leaves, Admiral Breslin makes one final protest. Private. Just the 2 of them. Admiral, these ships will kill thousands of sailors. King's voice is granite. We're at war, Harold. Everyone's at risk. My job isn't to eliminate risk, it's to win. And we can't win without carriers. And if Kaiser's wrong, then we'll have lost the war faster than if we'd built nothing. Breslin stands there in silence. Outside the window, winter rain falls on Washington. Somewhere in the Pacific, young men are dying on beaches waiting for air support that's too far away to help. King's voice softens just slightly. Harold, I know about Edward. I know what you lost. But we can't let perfect be the enemy of good enough. Not now, not when we're losing. The approval goes through, February 22, 1944. Kaiser receives the telegram at his Oakland office. Project approved. Begin construction. His chief engineer, Marcus Bedford, reads the telegram over his shoulder. Walt, we just promised the impossible. Kaiser looks out the window towards San Francisco Bay, where cargo ships that didn't exist 6 months ago are loading supplies for the Pacific. Marcus, impossible is what we do best. March 5, 1944, Kaiser Vancouver Shipyard, Washington State. Admiral Harold Breslin steps out of his staff car into a landscape that shouldn't exist. 90 days ago, this was empty land, scrub grass and mud flats along the Columbia River. Now it's the largest ship construction facility on the West Coast. 12 building slips stretch along the waterfront, each one 600 feet long. Overhead cranes tower against the gray sky, their steel arms reaching 200 feet high. Railroad tracks crisscross the yard, carrying prefabricated hull sections from inland factories. The air smells of welding smoke and fresh-cut steel. 4,000 workers move through the facility in organized chaos. The morning shift just started. Breslin can hear the sound of metal on metal, the hiss of acetylene torches, the rhythmic pounding of pneumatic hammers. It's 7:15 a.m., and the noise level is already deafening. He's brought an inspection team. 5 Navy engineers, 2 metallurgists, 3 structural specialists. They're here to verify that Kaiser's methods meet minimum naval standards. None of them expect to find anything acceptable. The yard superintendent meets them at the gate. Her name is Margaret Thornton. She's 34 years old, wearing coveralls and a welding helmet pushed back on her head. Her hands are scarred from hot metal. Breslin doesn't hide his surprise. You're the superintendent. Yes, sir. Been welding since I was 16. My brother died at Midway. Figured I'd help build ships to finish what he started. She leads them into the facility. What Breslin sees makes his chest tight. In the nearest building slip, 7 hull sections sit in sequence numbered 1 through 7. Each section is roughly 80 feet long, prefabricated in inland factories, and shipped here by rail. They're not riveted, they're welded. Continuous beads of metal run along every seam, X-rayed for quality control. A welding team works on the joint between sections 3 and 4. 2 women, both in their 20s, both moving with practiced precision. The lead welder is Sarah Miller. She's 19 years old. Her brother died at Guadalcanal. Breslin watches her work. The weld bead is perfect. Consistent depth. No gaps. No porosity. She completes a 6-foot seam in 11 minutes. One of Breslin's metallurgists examines the finished weld with a magnifying glass. He looks up confused. Admiral, this is better than riveting. The structural integrity actually exceeds our standards. Breslin moves to the next slip. Here, workers are installing the flight deck, but they're not building it in place. The entire deck was constructed in a separate facility, a single prefabricated unit 512 feet long. Now a massive crane lowers it onto the hull in one piece. The Navy's way is to build the flight deck plate by plate, welded or riveted to the hull structure over 6 weeks. Kaiser's way is to build it separately and install it in 6 hours. Captain Douglas Mather, who argued against the entire program, stands beside Breslin. This isn't shipbuilding. This is automobile assembly. Kaiser appears from somewhere in the facility. He's wearing a hard hat and work boots, walking fast. At 61, he moves like a man 20 years younger. Exactly right, Captain. Henry Ford builds a car every 93 minutes. I'm building a carrier every 8 days. Mather's face flushes. Ships aren't cars. No, Kaiser agrees. They're bigger, more complex, which means the efficiency gains from mass production are even more significant. He leads them to a large diagram mounted on the wall. It shows the entire construction process broken into discrete steps. Traditional Navy method, Kaiser says, pointing to one side of the diagram. You build the hull in the shipyard from keel up. 8 to 12 months, 25 separate construction phases, each requiring inspection and approval. 4-man riveting crews take 72 hours per hull section, 12,000 rivets per section. Then you build the flight deck on the hull, 6 weeks, one ship at a time. He points to the other side of the diagram. My method. The hull is 7 prefabricated sections built simultaneously in 6 different factories. Detroit builds the bow section. Pittsburgh builds sections 2 and 3. Cleveland does the midship section. Chicago handles sections 5 and 6. Gary, Indiana builds the stern. His finger traces the flow. All 7 sections ship here by rail. My welding crews join them in 11 days. 2-person teams, 18 hours per section. The flight deck is built separately and craned into place. We work on 12 ships simultaneously. Breslin does the math in his head. It shouldn't work. Every principle of naval architecture says it shouldn't work. But he's standing in a shipyard that didn't exist 3 months ago, watching hull sections that arrived yesterday from factories 1,000 miles inland being welded together by 19-year-old girls, and the welds are perfect. One of his structural engineers approaches. Admiral, I need to show you something. They walk to a testing facility at the edge of the yard. Inside, a section of welded hull sits in a hydraulic press. The engineer explains that they're stress testing the welds to failure. He activates the press. Pressure builds. The hull section groans under the load. At 47,000 pounds per square inch, something gives. But it's not the weld. The base metal tears. The weld holds. The engineer's voice is quiet. Sir Kaiser's welds are stronger than the hull plates themselves. Breslin walks back outside. The morning sun has burned through the coastal fog. In the nearest slip, workers are lowering the island superstructure onto CVE 55. The carrier is taking shape. In 4 more days, she'll be ready for launch. Margaret Thornton appears beside him. Want to see the quality control process? She leads him to a long building where every welded section passes through X-ray inspection. A technician shows Breslin the rejection rate, 0.3%. 3 welds out of every 1,000 fail inspection and get redone. Navy shipyards average 2% rejection rate. How, Breslin asks. Thornton points to a group of welders in a classroom. We train for 2 weeks before anyone touches a hull. Then they practice on scrap metal until they're perfect. Only then do they work on actual ships. The Navy's yards use experienced welders who learned 20 years ago and never updated their skills. Our people learn the newest techniques. She pauses. Also, sir, most of our welders are women. They have smaller hands, better fine motor control, and they're welding to honor brothers and sons who died. They don't make mistakes. Breslin looks at her scarred hands. Your brother, Midway, torpedo bomber pilot. His plane went down attacking the Akagi. He was 24. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry, Admiral. Help me build ships so other girls' brothers come home. By noon, Breslin has seen enough. His inspection team gathers in a temporary office to compile their report. The naval architects are in shock. The metallurgists keep double-checking their measurements. The structural engineers have no explanation for how welds this good are being produced this fast. Captain Mather summarizes, these construction methods are unorthodox. They violate traditional naval procedures. But the quality control exceeds our standards. The structural integrity is sound. The production speed is unprecedented. He pauses, choosing his words carefully. If I didn't see it myself, I wouldn't believe it. Breslin writes his report that evening in his hotel room. He stares at the page for a long time before he writes the conclusion. Against all expectations, Kaiser's construction methods appear functional. Quality control exceeds Navy Yard standards. Recommend proceeding to sea trials. He adds a private note for Admiral King. Ernest, these ships shouldn't work. Every instinct I have says they're too cheap, too fast, too different. But I watch 19-year-old girls weld hull sections better than our 40-year veterans. I don't understand it, but I can't deny it. June 5, 1944. Vancouver Shipyard, 11:07 a.m. A crowd of 3,000 workers gathers along the waterfront. Local news cameras set up on the pier. Navy brass in dress uniforms stand on a wooden platform. At the top of the slipway, CVE-55 sits ready for launch. Her hull is painted navy gray. Her flight deck stretches 5 to 12 feet, empty and pristine. On her bow, fresh paint spells out her name. USS Casablanca. Construction time from keel laying to launch, 112 days. Industry standard, 350 days. Kaiser stands on the platform next to Admiral Breslin. Neither man speaks. The tension between them is still there, but it's changed. Breslin doesn't trust Kaiser, but he can't argue with results. A Navy chaplain delivers a blessing. A local congressman makes a speech about American industrial might. Then Kaiser's wife, Bess, steps forward with a champagne bottle wrapped in ribbon. The crowd counts down. 3, 2, 1. The bottle breaks across the bow. Champagne foams down the hull. The blocks are knocked away. Casablanca slides down the slipway, picking up speed. She hits the water with a massive splash, displacing 700-800 tons of river water. The hull settles, floats, no buckling, no structural failure, no welds popping. The crowd erupts in cheers. Workers who built her in 16 weeks scream and hug each other. Some are crying. Breslin watches the carrier float on the Columbia River, riding high and stable. He's been wrong about ships before, but never about something this fundamental. He turns to Kaiser. I'll be damned, you did it. Kaiser doesn't smile. We'll know for sure in 2 weeks. Sea trials are the real test. June 20th, 1904. Pacific Ocean, 40 miles off the Washington coast. USS Casablanca steams into open water for the first time. The morning is clear, winds 10 knots from the northwest seas running 4 to 6 feet. Perfect conditions for flight operations. On the bridge, Captain James Walker commands the ship. He's 42 years old, career Navy, promoted from executive officer on USS Enterprise. He requested this assignment specifically because he doesn't believe escort carriers will work, and he wants to be the one to prove it. The test protocol is simple. Launch and recover 6 aircraft in varying sea conditions. Test the catapult arresting gear in aircraft elevators. Simulate damage control scenarios. Push the ship to its limits. If anything fails, the entire program stops. Kaiser's other 49 carriers sit incomplete in building slips, waiting for Casablanca to prove the concept. 0800 hours. The first aircraft is spotted on the catapult, an F-4F Wildcat fighter. The pilot is Lieutenant Richard Chen. He's 26 years old, the first Chinese-American carrier pilot in the Navy. He volunteered for this test because someone told him escort carriers were too dangerous for pilots of color. The catapult officer signals. Chen pushes the throttle to full power. The Wildcat's engine screams. The catapult fires 0 to 90 miles per hour in 2 seconds. The Wildcat leaves the deck dip slightly as it transitions from catapult power to engine power, then climbs. The catapult held. The steam pressure was correct. The track didn't buckle. Chen circles the ship at 1,500 feet. The air boss calls him in for recovery. Landing on a carrier is controlled violence. The pilot aims for a 500-foot-long deck moving through ocean swells. He catches a wire with his tailhook, or he goes into the ocean. Chen lines up his approach. 75 knots. The carrier is pitching in the swells, the deck rising and falling 8 feet. He adjusts, compensates, commits. The Wildcat slams onto the deck. The tail hook catches the third arresting wire. The wire stretches, absorbing the kinetic energy of a 500-pound aircraft traveling 75 miles per hour. The Wildcat stops in 200 feet. Perfect recovery. The deck crew unhooks the wire. Chen taxis forward. The aircraft elevator lowers him to the hangar deck. Captain Walker makes a note in the log. First trap successful. Arresting gear functioning as designed. Over the next 6 hours, they launch and recover 18 aircraft. Wildcats, Avengers, Hellcats. Every landing is successful. Every catapult shot works. The arresting gear performs flawlessly. At 1400 hours, they simulate a hangar deck fire. Damage control teams extinguish it in 4 minutes. Navy standard is 6 minutes. At 1600 hours, they test the watertight integrity. Flooding a compartment. The bulkheads hold. The pumps work. Water is cleared in 8 minutes. At 1730 hours, Captain Walker secures from flight operations. He retreats to his cabin to write the assessment report. For 3 hours, he writes and rewrites, trying to find problems, trying to identify weaknesses. He can't. The ship works. His final report is delivered to Admiral King on June 25th. USS Casablanca performed all carrier functions successfully. Arresting gear catapults and aviation fuel systems functioned without failure. Damage control exceeded expectations. Recommend proceeding with full production. At the bottom, Walker adds a handwritten note. I expected this ship to fail. I wanted it to fail. It didn't. Kaiser was right. We were wrong. The approval comes through on June 27th. Authorization to complete all 50 carriers. Production accelerates. July 1944, 5 carriers launched in 31 days. CVE 56 through CVE 60. August 1944. 1 carrier launched every 6.8 days. September 1944. Production hits peak efficiency. Kaiser's workers paint a new motto on the shipyard gate. The impossible takes us 8 days. But sailors in the fleet have their own name for the ships. It spreads through ready rooms and mess halls, passed along in letters home spoken with a mixture of pride and gallows humor. Jeep carriers, cheap, disposable, barely adequate. Woolworth carriers, 5 and dime quality. And the cruelest nickname, the one that sticks, CVE. The official designation is carrier escort, but every sailor knows what it really stands for. Combustible, vulnerable, expendable. In August 1944, Seaman Daniel Marsh receives his orders. Report to CVE 73 USS St. Lo. The ship is still under construction at Vancouver. He'll be part of the commissioning crew. Marsh is 19 years old. He grew up on a farm outside Des Moines. He'd never seen the ocean until boot camp. He volunteered for sea duty because the recruiter said carriers were the safest ships in the fleet. He arrives at Vancouver on August 15th. St. Lo sits in building slip number 7, nearly complete. Workers are installing the radar antenna. The flight deck is painted. The island superstructure bears the ship's number in fresh white paint. A chief petty officer shows Marsh around. The carrier is small, cramped. The passageways are narrow. The berthing spaces are tight. Everything feels temporary, like a ship built to last one war, not a lifetime. That night, Marsh writes a letter home to his mother. Dear Ma, I got assigned to CVE 73. They call her St. Lo after some battle in France. She's smaller than I expected. The other sailors call these ships Woolworth carriers because they're cheap. Some guys joke that CVE stands for combustible, vulnerable, expendable. But Ma, someone has to protect those Marines on the beaches. If it's going to be me, I'll do it proud. Love, Danny. He doesn't mail the letter for 3 days. When he does, he crosses out the part about combustible, vulnerable, expendable. No point worrying his mother. August 1944. Tokyo, Imperial Japanese Navy Headquarters. Admiral Semu Toyota sits in his office reviewing intelligence reports from the Pacific. The Americans are building a new class of carrier, small, slow, designation CVE. Japanese naval intelligence has photographs from reconnaissance aircraft. The carriers displace roughly 8,000 tons, maximum speed 18 knots, armament minimal, 1 5-inch gun, light anti-aircraft weapons. Toyota studies the photographs. These are not warships. These are cargo ships pretending to be carriers. Merchant hulls with flight decks. No armor, no protection, Built quickly, built cheaply. His intelligence officer provides additional details. Sir, Americans are building them very rapidly. We estimate 40 to 50 ships by year end. Toyota sets down the photograph. Quantity cannot replace quality. One of our fleet carriers is worth 10 of these Woolworth carriers. The intelligence officer looks confused. Woolworth, sir? An American store that sells cheap goods. Their own sailors call these Woolworth carriers. It's an insult. It means poorly made. Disposable. He picks up another photograph. This one shows USS Casablanca during sea trials. The flight deck is crowded with aircraft, but Toyota can see the truth. Thin hull, minimal freeboard. A strong typhoon would probably sink her. If our battleships encounter these carriers, Toyota says they will destroy them easily. They are not a threat. His staff officer makes a note in the daily log. The assessment will be filed and distributed to fleet commanders. The message is clear. CVE-class carriers are not priority targets. They are weak, expendable. Toyota doesn't know that in 14 months, 6 of these weak expendable carriers will face his finest battleships off Samar Island, and they'll win. November 24, 1944, 5:13 a.m. Gilbert Islands, USS Liscombe Bay steams in formation 50 miles north of Macon Atoll. She's been on station for 3 days providing air support for Marine landings. The operation is going well. Marines are advancing ahead of schedule. Japanese resistance is lighter than expected. On board Liscombe Bay, the crew is exhausted but proud. They've flown 147 sorties in 72 hours. Their aircraft have destroyed 16 Japanese positions, knocked out 4 artillery batteries, and provided close air support that reduced Marine casualties by 60%. These Woolworth carriers work. The sailors know it. The Marines know it. Rear Admiral Henry Mullenix stands on the bridge watching the horizon lighten with approaching dawn. He's 48 years old. He commanded destroyers in World War I. He requested this assignment because he believes in the escort carrier concept and wanted to prove it in combat. He's proven it. The operation is a success. In 6 more hours, they'll withdraw to replenish fuel and ammunition. Then back on station for another 3 days. Mullenix never sees the torpedo. Japanese submarine I-175, Commander Sunao Tabata commanding, has been tracking the carrier group for 8 hours. Tabata is patient, methodical. He's sunk 2 American transports and 1 destroyer in the last 6 months. At 5:13 a.m., from a range of 1,500 yards, he fires a spread of 3 torpedoes. 1 misses. 1 misses. 1 hits USS Liscombe Bay's bomb magazine. The explosion occurs at 5:13 and 17 seconds. The bomb magazine contains 40 tons of high explosives. When the torpedo detonates it, the force is equivalent to 400 tons of TNT. The fireball is visible from 25 miles away. It climbs 1,000 feet into the pre-dawn sky. The blast tears Liscombe Bay in half. On the bridge, Admiral Mullenix has 2 seconds to understand what happened before the concussion wave kills him. He's the first American admiral killed in action in the Pacific War. In the engine room, 180 men are trapped below the waterline. The watertight doors slam shut, automatically sealing them in. The compartment floods in 90 seconds. None survive. On the flight deck, Seaman Robert Hayes is thrown 60 feet by the blast. He lands in the water, his uniform on fire. 40% of his body is burned. He treads water, watching his ship die. The bow section sinks at 5:27 a.m., 14 minutes after the explosion. The stern section sinks at 5:36 a.m., 23 minutes after the explosion. 644 sailors die. Out of a crew of 916, 272 survive. Robert Hayes is pulled from the water by a destroyer. He's 20 years old. He'll die in the hospital 3 days later from his burns. His last words are recorded by a Navy chaplain. "Tell my folks the ship did good. We did good." Commander Tabata surfaces I-175 6 hours later to transmit his report to Tokyo. Sank American escort carrier with single torpedo. Hull weak as predicted. No armor protection. Vessel broke apart and sank in under 30 minutes. CVE-class carriers are death traps, as intelligence suggested. The report is filed and distributed to Japanese fleet commanders. It confirms what everyone already believes. CVE carriers are expendable, poorly built, easy targets. November 26, 19 Kaiser's office, Oakland, California. The telegram arrives at 2:17 p.m. Kaiser is in a meeting with steel suppliers when his secretary interrupts. Her face is pale. The telegram is 8 words. CVE 56 lost with heavy casualties, 644 dead. Kaiser reads it 3 times. His hands are shaking. He dismisses the suppliers and closes the office door. CVE 56. USS Liscombe Bay, the first escort carrier he built. Hull late in April, launched in June, sea trials in July, combat operations in September. 644 men dead, exactly as Admiral Breslin predicted 3 years ago. These vessels will be death traps. You'll have blood on your hands. Kaiser goes home, doesn't speak. His wife Bess finds him in his study at midnight, sitting in the dark holding the telegram and his brother Thomas's letter from 1918. I tried to save them, he says. I killed them. Bess sits beside him. She doesn't offer comfort. She knows him too well. She knows he'll carry this. Breslin was right, Kaiser says. I'm a road builder playing with lives. I should have listened. For 18 hours, Kaiser doesn't move. He doesn't eat. He doesn't sleep. He sits in his study holding 2 pieces of paper. One from 1918, one from 1944. Both announcing deaths he couldn't prevent. December 1st, Kaiser forces himself to get dressed. He gets in his car. He drives. Over the next 5 days, he visits 23 families in Northern California. Families of men who died on Liscombe Bay. He doesn't call ahead. He just appears at their doors. Mrs. Sarah Hayes lives in Richmond. Her son Robert was the sailor who died from burns, the one who said the ship did good. Kaiser stands on her porch, hat in his hands. He doesn't know what to say. He's faced down admirals and bureaucrats and impossible engineering problems. But he doesn't know how to face this woman whose son died on a ship he built. Mrs. Hayes opens the door. She's 54 years old. She recognizes Kaiser from newspaper photographs. Mr. Kaiser, ma'am, I wanted to say I'm sorry about Robert. I wanted you to know that the ship he died on, I built it. I'm responsible. She looks at him for a long moment. Come inside. They sit in her kitchen. She makes coffee. The house is small, clean, filled with photographs of Robert. School pictures, boot camp graduation. One photo of him on Liscombe Bay's deck smiling. They sent me his last words, Mrs. Hayes says. The chaplain wrote them down. Robert said to tell us the ship did good. Kaiser's throat is tight. He can't speak. Mr. Kaiser, my boy, could have been a farmer. He could have stayed safe in Richmond. But he joined the Navy because he wanted to protect people. He died doing that. Don't you dishonor his choice by calling it a failure. Ma'am, the ship broke apart. 600 men died. And how many Marines did that ship's aircraft save before it sank? She points to a newspaper clipping on her refrigerator. It's an article about the Macon landing. It says escort carrier air support reduced Marine casualties by 60%. That's over 900 Marines who lived, Mrs. Hayes says. My Robert's ship did that. Don't you dare tell me his death meant nothing. Kaiser drives back to Oakland that night. He can't sleep. He walks through his empty house until dawn. At 6 a.m., there's a knock on the door. Admiral Breslin stands on the porch. He's in civilian clothes. He's traveled from Washington specifically for this. They sit in Kaiser's study. Neither man speaks for a long time. Finally, Breslin says, I came to tell you I'm sorry. Kaiser looks up. You were right. You said these ships would kill sailors. You were right. No, Breslin says quietly. I was wrong. He pulls papers from his briefcase. Casualty reports from the Pacific. Tarawa without escort carriers. 987 Marines dead. Macon with escort carriers. 63 Marines dead. 924 Marines lived at Macon because Liscombe Bay was there. Breslin says, your ship saved nearly 1,000 lives before it sank. He pulls out another report. 144 sailors died on Liscombe Bay, but their aircraft flew 147 sorties that protected 10,000 Marines on those beaches. The mathematics are brutal, Walt, but they're clear. Kaiser stares at the numbers. My son Edward died at Pearl Harbor. Breslin continues. For 3 years I've been angry. Angry at the Japanese. Angry at our admirals who didn't see it coming. angry at men like you who didn't serve but profited from war. I was wrong about you. He stands. Your brother Thomas died waiting for artillery support that arrived too late. Liscombe Bay's crew died providing air support that arrived exactly when it was needed. There's honor in that. After Breslin leaves, Kaiser sits in his study for another hour. Then he gets dressed. He drives to the Vancouver shipyard. 8 more carriers are under construction. Workers ask if they are shutting down. Kaiser's voice is steady. We're not stopping. We're building faster. October 20th, 1944. Leyte Gulf, Philippines. The largest naval armada in Pacific War history gathers in these waters. More than 700 ships, 600,000 American soldiers and sailors. Their mission is to retake the Philippines and sever Japan's oil supply from the Dutch East Indies. Among those 700 ships are 6 escort carriers designated Taffy 3, CV-66 Fanshawe Bay, CV-70 White Plains, CV-68 Kalinan Bay, CV-73 St. Lo, CV-69 Kitkin Bay, CV-71 Gambier Bay. Their mission is simple: provide air support for Army troops landing on Leyte Island, stay 50 miles offshore, launch strikes against Japanese positions, protect the landing beaches. It's supposed to be safe duty. The Japanese fleet is broken, scattered across the Pacific. American intelligence says no major surface forces are within 500 miles. Intelligence is wrong. October 24th, 1944. 2:00 p.m. American scout planes spot Admiral Takeo Kurita's center force in the sea beyond sea. 4 battleships including Yamato, 6 heavy cruisers, 2 light cruisers, 11 destroyers. The most powerful surface fleet Japan has assembled in 2 years. Admiral William Halsey commands the 3rd Fleet, 6 fleet carriers, 8 fast battleships, the most powerful naval force in the war world. Shinum. His mission is to protect the landing beaches from Japanese surface attack. Halsey orders airstrikes on Kurita's force. American planes sink the battleship Musashi Yamato's sister ship. They damage 3 cruisers. Kurita's fleet turns west, retreating. Halsey believes he's won. The Japanese surface threat is eliminated. But at 4:00 p.m., scout planes spot a different Japanese force. Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa's northern force. 4 carriers sailing south from Japan. Halsey sees carriers on his radar. For 3 years, carriers have been the primary threat. Carriers won at Pearl Harbor. Carriers won at Midway. Carriers control the Pacific. He doesn't know Ozawa's carriers are nearly empty. Barely enough aircraft to fly combat patrol. They're bait, a decoy to draw Halsey away from San Bernardino Strait. At 8:30 p.m., Halsey makes his decision. He takes his entire fleet north. All 6 carriers, all 8 battleships, every cruiser, every destroyer. He leaves San Bernardino Strait unguarded. At 11:30 p.m. in total darkness, Kurita's center force reverses course. The retreat was a feint. Now they steam east through San Bernardino Strait, the passage Halsey was supposed to be blocking. By dawn, Kurita's battleships will be in position to attack the American landing beaches. 200,000 soldiers trapped on shore, unprotected, defenseless. Between Kurita's fleet and those soldiers are 6 escort carriers. October 25th, 1944. 2:00 a.m. On USS St. Lo, Daniel Marsh sleeps in his bunk. Around him, 889 sailors sleep in cramped berthing spaces below the waterline. They've been on station for 5 days. Routine patrol, launch strikes, recover aircraft, replenish ammunition. Repeat. The ship's clock ticks toward dawn. In 4 hours and 47 minutes, Marsh will stand on the flight deck and see masts on the horizon. In 4 hours and 47 minutes, everything will change. But now he sleeps, dreaming of Iowa, of cornfields and open skate, of home. 6:00 a.m. Marsh wakes to reveille. He dresses in the darkness, pulls on dungarees and boots, climbs the ladder to the mess deck. Breakfast is powdered eggs and toast. The coffee tastes like engine oil. Around him, sailors joke and complain. Same as every morning. Nobody knows what's coming. 6:30 a.m. Marsh heads topside for his watch. Flight deck crew. His job is to help launch and recover aircraft. Spot planes, hook arresting wires, push aircraft to elevators. The morning is clear, stars fading as the eastern sky lightens, a light breeze from the north. Calm seas. Thomas Keane joins him at the rail. They've been friends since boot camp. Both from the Midwest, both farm boys who'd never seen the ocean. "Think we'll see action today?" Keane asks. Marsh shrugs. "Intel says the Japanese fleet is 500 miles away. We'll probably just fly patrol and go home." He doesn't know that 12 miles north, Yamato's forward lookout has just spotted masts on the horizon. He doesn't know that in 17 minutes, radar will pick up surface contacts closing at 27 knots. He doesn't know that in 20 minutes, his entire world will collapse into chaos and fire and fear. But he will. 7:00 a.m., range 14 miles. The three destroyers escorting Taffy 3 do something that defies logic and training and survival instinct. USS Johnston, USS Hull, and USS Herman turn toward the Japanese fleet. Three destroyers, each displacing 2,100 tons, charging four battleships that displace 60,000 tons each. Commander Ernest Evans commands Johnston. He's 37 years old, Cherokee Indian from Oklahoma. He picks up the ship's intercom. His voice is calm. "This will be a fight against overwhelming odds from which survival cannot be expected. Those who wish to lay below and await fate may do so. Good luck to all of you." No one leaves their post. Johnston accelerates to flank speed, 35 knots. The destroyer's wake boils white. Evans targets the heavy cruiser Kumano with 5 torpedoes. Range 10,000 yards. The torpedoes run true. One hits. Kumano's bow explodes in orange flame and black smoke. The cruiser slews out of formation, listing crippled. The Japanese fleet responds. Battleship Congo opens fire with 14-inch guns. The first salvo brackets Johnston. Water erupts in massive columns. The second salvo hits. A 14-inch shell penetrates Johnston's bridge. Evans is killed instantly. But the destroyer keeps fighting. The executive officer takes command. Johnston keeps shooting, keeps charging, keeps drawing fire away from the carriers. The sacrifice buys time. Not much, maybe 10 minutes. But 10 minutes means the carriers can launch more aircraft. 10 minutes means they can run another 3 miles east. 10 minutes means some men might survive. 7:15 a.m., range 12 miles. 120 aircraft are airborne now. F-4F Wildcats, FM-2 fighters, TBM Avengers. There's no coordination, no briefing, no tactical plan. Pilots attack individually as they reach the Japanese fleet using whatever weapons they have. Lieutenant Commander Edward Huxtable from Gambier Bay leads 8 FM-2 fighters. Each plane carries 4 5-inch rockets designed for ground attack. Against battleship armor, they might as well be fireworks. Huxtable's voice crackles over the radio. Calm, professional. "Listen up. We can't sink these bastards, but we can make them flinch." He rolls into his dive from 8,000 feet. Japanese Type 3 anti-aircraft fire fills the sky. 18-inch shells fuse to detonate at altitude. Each detonation creates a shrapnel cloud 100 feet across. Huxtable's wingman, Ensign Robert Lang, takes a direct hit. His plane shudders. The left wing catches fire. Flames spread toward the cockpit. Lang doesn't pull out. He keeps diving, keeps his finger on the trigger, keeps aiming at Yamato even as fire consumes his aircraft. At 800 feet, he releases his rockets. 4 streaks of white smoke. They hit Yamato's superstructure. No penetration, no damage. But the battleship's gun crews dive for cover. Fire control is disrupted. Yamato turns hard to evade the burning aircraft diving at her bridge. The evasive turn throws off her firing solution. 3 salvos miss Gambier Bay by 200 yards. Lang pulls up. Too late. The plane explodes 400 feet above Yamato's deck. He never got out. 1 pilot, 1 burning plane, 1 desperate attack. 900 Marines on Leyte beaches don't die because Yamato's guns missed for 30 seconds. 7:35 a.m., range 10 miles. The pilot Marsh loaded a torpedo for hours earlier. Lieutenant Frederick Burgess leads 6 TBM Avengers against Battleship Congo. To drop a torpedo successfully against a moving target, you need to fly straight and level at 100 feet altitude, 120 knots, airspeed for 8 full seconds. 8 seconds while every gun on a 30,000-ton battleship tries to kill you. Burgess lines up his run. The Japanese heavy cruiser, Tone, opens fire. 5-inch guns, 25mm anti-aircraft cannons. The sky fills with tracers. His tail gunner aviation machinist mate Raymond Cole is hit in the first burst. The intercom goes dead. Burgess doesn't know if Cole is wounded or dead. He can't look back. He has to hold the course. Straight, level, 100 feet above the water. The Avenger shudders as shells tear through the wings. Hydraulic fluid sprays across the canopy. The stick goes mushy. Burgess fights to keep the nose level. 5 seconds. 6. 7. At 500 yards, he releases. The Mark 13 torpedo drops cleanly, hits the water, runs true at 33 knots. Congo's lookout sees it coming. The battleship turns hard. 30,000 tons heeling into an emergency turn. The torpedo misses by 30 feet. Burgess tries to climb. His engine coughs. Oil pressure drops. Coolant temperature spikes. He's not going to make it back. He nurses the damaged Avenger towards St. Lo, losing altitude. 200 feet, 100, 50. The plane hits the water 200 yards from the carrier. Marsh and the deck crew see it go in. They launch a whaleboat immediately. Pull Burgess from the sinking wreckage. His tail gunner Cole is dead. Burgess is bleeding from shrapnel wounds in his chest and abdomen. They carry him to sickbay. Burgess grabs Marsh's arm. His grip is weak. "Did I get him?" Marsh doesn't hesitate. "Direct hit, sir. You sank the bastard." Burgess smiles. "Good. That's good." He dies 6 minutes later from internal bleeding. Marsh goes back to the flight deck. More aircraft are landing. Shot up. Trailing smoke. The deck is slick with hydraulic fluid and blood. The radar shows Japanese ships at 9 miles. 8:10 a.m. Range 8 miles. USS Gambier Bay falls behind the formation. She's been hit 3 times by the Japanese cruiser Chikuma. 8-inch shells punch through her unarmored hull like paper. Her engine room is flooding. Steam lines ruptured. Speed drops to 11 knots. The other carriers pull ahead. Gambier Bay is alone. Captain Walter Vuegg orders all non-essential personnel to abandon ship. Get into life rafts. Hope the destroyers can pick them up. No one moves. The crew stays at their posts. Chikuma closes to 6,000 yards. Point-blank range for an 8-inch gun. The cruiser fires a full salvo. Shells tear into Gambier Bay's hull. One penetrates to the bomb magazine. 40 tons of high explosives. The explosion lifts the carrier's stern out of the water. The keel breaks. Gambier Bay's back snaps like a tree in a storm. The ship capsizes at 8:20 a.m. 800 sailors and airmen go into the water. The nearest rescue ship is 40 miles away. Seaman First Class William Fletcher from Georgia treads water. Around him, men are dying, some from wounds, some from exhaustion, some just give up and slip beneath the surface. Oil slicks burn. Black smoke rises into the clear morning sky. The smell is diesel fuel and burning flesh. Sharks circle. A tiger shark 8 feet long bumps Fletcher's leg. He screams, thrashes, punches the shark's snout with his fist. The shark takes 3 of his fingers, but swims away. Fletcher will spend 31 hours in the water before a destroyer finds him. Years later at a veterans reunion, someone asks him about the Woolworth carriers, about the jokes, about combustible, vulnerable, expendable. Fletcher's voice is quiet. "We were in the cheapest carriers in the fleet. We all knew it. But when those battleships came, we didn't quit. We fought like our ships were worth dying for." 8:30 a.m., range 7 miles. On Yamato's bridge, Admiral Kurita watches Gambier Bay sink. He expects the other carriers to scatter now, to run, to save themselves. They don't. They keep fighting. Aircraft keep attacking. The small carriers keep launching planes even as his shells fall around them. Kurita turns to his chief of staff. "This is not escort carrier behavior. These must be fleet carriers from Halsey's 3rd Fleet." His staff officer checks the silhouettes. "Sir, intelligence confirms these are CVE class. Escort carriers, maximum speed 18 knots, minimal armament." Kurita shakes his head. "Fleet carriers run when outgunned. These ships are standing and fighting. Therefore, they must be fleet carriers. Halsey must be nearby. This is a trap. It's a fatal miscalculation." For 3 years, Kurita has fought American carriers. He knows their tactics. Fleet carriers with their valuable aircraft and experienced pilots don't risk surface combat. They stay at range. They launch strikes and withdraw. But these carriers are fighting at point-blank range, launching aircraft with empty guns, their destroyers charging battleships in suicide attacks. Only fleet carriers fight like this. Only Halsey's experienced crews would be this aggressive. Therefore, Kurita reasons these must be fleet carriers. Therefore, Halsey's main force must be close. Therefore, this is a trap. He doesn't know he's wrong. He doesn't know these cheap throwaway Woolworth carriers are fighting with the desperation of men who have nowhere to run, who know they're about to die, who choose to die fighting instead of running. At 9:11 a.m. with victory in his grasp, with the American carriers crippled and bleeding, Admiral Kurita that gives an order that will haunt him for the rest of his life. All ships discontinue action. Course north, flank speed. His staff is stunned. They're winning. One more hour and the carriers will be destroyed. One more hour and they can attack the landing beaches. But Kurita is convinced Halsey is coming. Convinced this is a trap. Convinced he'll lose his entire fleet if he doesn't retreat now. The Japanese fleet turns north and steams away. On St. Louis Bridge, Admiral Clifton Sprague watches the radar contacts fade. He can't process it. They were dead. All of them. Yamato had them in gun range. Another 30 minutes and they'd all be on the bottom. And then the Japanese left. Sprague's voice is barely a whisper. What just happened? No one answers. No one knows. 10:32 a.m. 5 escort carriers still float, damaged, on fire, but alive. The crew secure from general quarters. Men collapse on deck. Some cry. Some laugh. Most are too exhausted to feel anything. Daniel Marsh sits with his back against a tie-down ring. His hands won't stop shaking. They survived. 6 Woolworth carriers against 4 battleships, combustible, vulnerable, expendable. They fought for 2 hours and 40 minutes. And they won. Thomas Keene sits beside him. Neither speaks. Around them, the flight deck is chaos. Aircraft with battle damage, holes in the deck from shell fragments, blood and hydraulic fluid mixing in pools. But they're alive. 10:47 a.m., the radar operator's voice. Tired, routine. Single aircraft contact, bearing 270, altitude 2,000 feet. Probably a returning strike aircraft. The combat air patrol has been aloft for hours. Everyone's coming home. St. Louis secures from general quarters. The crew needs rest. Food. Sleep. 10:50 a.m. The aircraft is a Japanese A6M0 fighter. Engine damaged, unable to return to base. The pilot is Lieutenant Yukio Seki, 23 years old. He commands the Shikishima unit, the first organized kamikaze squadron in the war. He volunteered for this mission. 1 plane, 1 bomb, 1 chance to die for the Emperor. He's been searching for American carriers for an hour. Fuel is almost gone. Then he sees them. 5 escort carriers, battle-damaged recovering aircraft. Seki chooses the nearest one, CVE-73, USS St. Louis. He pushes the stick forward. The Zero enters a dive from 2,000 feet. On St. Louis, someone sees him. Too late. The 5-inch gun swings toward the diving aircraft. Opens fire. Miss. 40mm Bofors guns fire. Tracers arc toward the Zero. Too slow. 20mm Oerlikon guns hammer away. Too late. The Zero hits St. Louis flight deck at 350 miles per hour. It penetrates to the hangar deck. Aviation gasoline from the Zero's ruptured tank sprays across parked aircraft. Ignites. Fire spreads in seconds. Torpedo warheads cook off. Bombs detonate. The explosions chain through the ship faster than damage control can respond. 10:53 a.m. A massive secondary explosion tears St. Louis in half. The blast lifts the forward aircraft elevator 1,000 feet into the air. A 20-ton piece of steel spinning through the sky like a playing card. The fireball is visible from 30 miles. Sailors on other ships see it. No St. Louis is gone. Daniel Marsh is on the starboard catwalk when the explosion hits. The world becomes fire and noise and force. He's thrown, flying, weightless. He hits the water 40 feet from the ship. His right leg snaps on impact. Pain explodes up his spine. He surfaces gasping, screaming. Around him, the ocean is full of debris, steel, wood, bodies. St. Louis is breaking apart. Her bow and stern tilt upward as the midsection floods and sinks. Men are jumping from the flight deck, some on fire, some already dead, some just trying to get away before the ship pulls them under. The carrier sinks at 11:25 a.m., 34 minutes from kamikaze impact to final sinking. 113 sailors die. 776 go into the water. Marsh treads water with his good leg. His right leg hangs useless. He can feel bone grinding. The pain is beyond anything he's ever imagined. He focuses on staying conscious, on staying afloat. Hours pass. The sun climbs higher. The tropical heat is crushing, but Marsh is shaking from shock. His lips crack. His tongue swells. Salt water gets in his mouth. He vomits, can't stop shaking. Men around him are dying. He watches them slip away, watches their faces disappear beneath the surface. Too weak to fight anymore. A shark bumps his wounded leg. 6-foot black tip. Marsh screams, thrashes. The shark circles. Bumps again, takes a bite from his left arm. Marsh keeps fighting, keeps treading water, keeps refusing to die. Night falls. He's been in the water for 10 hours. He's hallucinating, seeing things that aren't there. His mother's kitchen, the farm, Iowa in summer. Thomas Keene floats nearby. They grab onto each other, hold each other up. Neither has the strength to talk. The stars come out, beautiful, indifferent. October 27th, dawn. Destroyer USS Newcomb finds them. 52 hours in the water. Marsh is delirious. Shark bites on his left arm. His right leg black with infection, gangrene spreading. Sailors pull him aboard, wrap him in blankets, give him water. The first thing he says, "Did we stop them? Did we win?" The sailor nods. "Yeah, kid, you stopped them. The Japs turned around. The Marines are fine." Marsh passes out. He wakes 3 days later on a hospital ship. A doctor is standing over him. "Son, we had to take your leg. Below the knee. Infection was too far gone." Marsh looks down. His right leg ends in bandages. He's alive. That's more than he expected. November 15th, 1945. Naval Hospital, San Diego. Walter Kaiser visits the recovery ward. He's 63 years old. The war in Europe ended 6 months ago. Japan surrendered in August. The Pacific War is over. Kaiser walks between rows of beds. Young men missing arms, legs, eyes. The cost of victory. He finds Daniel Marsh reading a letter from his mother. Marsh looks up, recognizes Kaiser's face from newspaper photographs. "Mr. Kaiser." Kaiser pulls up a chair, sits. "Seaman Marsh. I wanted to meet the men who sailed my ships." They talk for an hour. Kaiser asks about the battle. Marsh describes it, the fear, the impossibility, the miracle. "They called your ships Woolworth carriers," Marsh says. "Combustible, vulnerable, expendable. Everyone knew what it meant." Kaiser's face tightens. "I know. But when those battleships came, we didn't act expendable. We fought like your ships were worth dying for." Marsh pauses, looks at Kaiser directly. "You built St. Lo in 8 days. Everyone said she'd fall apart. She didn't. Took 2 hours of gunfire and a kamikaze to sink her. And before she went down, she helped stop the Japanese fleet. She saved 200,000 soldiers on those beaches." Kaiser's voice is rough. 776 men went into the water. 113 died. "Yes, sir, but we won, because your cheap carriers were there." Kaiser stays another hour. When he leaves, he shakes Marsh's hand. "They were right, son. The ships were expendable. You men weren't." September 2nd, 1945, Tokyo Bay, USS Missouri. Japan surrenders. Among the 300 ships anchored in Tokyo Bay are 13 escort carriers. Kaiser's Woolworth carriers that admirals said would never work. Admiral Chester Nimitz addresses the assembled officers after the ceremony. "We won this war with American courage, determination, and industrial capacity. The escort carriers embody all three. The final statistics are compiled over the following months. Total Kaiser escort carriers built. 50 Casablanca-class ships. Total U.S. escort carriers, all builders. 122. Production speed, 1 carrier every 8.3 days. Combat loss rate, 6 ships, 4.9%. Far below Navy predictions of 35 to 40%. Aircraft sorties flown, 38,000 close air support missions. Japanese aircraft destroyed, 12,200 confirmed kills. Estimated American lives saved, 50,000 Marines and soldiers. The 2,800 sailors killed on all 6 carriers lost in combat. The mathematics are brutal, but clear. December 18, 1946, Oakland, California. Kaiser receives the Navy Distinguished Service Medal. Private ceremony. He refused public recognition. Admiral Breslin requested permission to present the medal personally. They stand in Kaiser's office, just the two of them. Breslin pins the medal to Kaiser's suit jacket. 3 years ago, I called you reckless and dangerous, Breslin says. I was wrong. Kaiser touches the medal. You were protecting your sailor's herald. You were right to question me. My son Edward died on the Arizona. For 3 years, I believed only perfect ships could honor his sacrifice. You taught me something different. Good enough ships built fast enough save more lives than perfect ships that arrive too late. They shake hands, 2 old men who spent 3 years as enemies, who ended as something close to friends. All 50 Casablanca-class carriers are scrapped by 1960. Emergency warships, not meant to last, none survive as museum ships. But their legacy endures. Modern amphibious assault ships trace their lineage to Kaiser's escort carriers. USS America, LHA-6, commissioned 2014, carries the name of Kaiser's CVE-66. The mission is identical. Stay close to shore. Provide air support. Bring Marines home. August 24, 1967. Honolulu, Hawaii. Walter Kaiser dies at age 85. His obituary runs 6 columns in the New York Times. Hoover Dam, Oakland Bridge. Kaiser Permanente Healthcare. The escort carriers rate 1 sentence. But at his funeral, 63 elderly men attend in naval uniforms. Veterans of Taffy 3, survivors of Gambier Bay and St. Lo, Marines from Tarawa and Iwo Jima. They don't come because Kaiser was famous. They come because his cheap, crude, impossible carriers brought them home alive. After the service, a reporter asked Daniel Marsh why he flew from Iowa for the funeral. Marsh is 68 now, walking with a prosthetic leg, Purple Heart ribbon on his jacket. His answer is simple. Henry Kaiser never wore a uniform, never fired a shot, but he saved more American lives than most generals. He built ships that shouldn't work, crewed by sailors who refused to quit, fighting battles we weren't supposed to win. The least I could do was say thank you. Marsh places his Purple Heart medal on Kaiser's casket, salutes, his prosthetic leg visible below his suit pants. He whispers words the other mourners can't hear. Fair winds and following seas, Mr. Kaiser. You brought us home. The story ends where it began. October 25, 1945. 6 escort carriers facing 4 battleships off Samar Island. The Navy said it was impossible. Daniel Marsh and 5 400 sailors proved them wrong. Sometimes the best solution isn't the perfect solution. Sometimes it's the fast solution, the cheap solution, the solution everyone says is impossible. Sometimes crazy is exactly what you need to win.